Today is May 1st, first day back to work since the loss of my son. And
it's ridiculous. And then you're expected to come back, sit in a meeting about quarterly reports, and act like your world hasn't just imploded. It's ridiculous. It's unrealistic. And yet so many people are forced to push through because they don't have a choice.
All the enjoyment. Trying to get your identity back and you're trying to get on track, but that's the biggest, it's hard because the people at work, they expect you to be you.
Now let me ask you something. What if it wasn't you being forced back to work? What if it was your surgeon, your pilot, or your child's teacher? Would you want the person performing your...
Hello, fam, friends, and all my viewers. This is Carol, aka Cielle. Thank you for joining me for this fourth segment in this Keep Going series, Grieving Out in Nature. This time I've compiled videos from several other content creators, and I hope you will enjoy the insight and information that you get from their stories, their ideas, their experiences, their challenges around grieving and getting back to work, getting back into the flow of things. So yeah, the scenery you are watching is from the Hammond's Ferry community in North Augusta, South Carolina. This is Book Park, I hope I'm saying it right, Boeckh, Book Park, just along the Savannah River. So I'm standing on the South Carolina side, once again here in North Augusta, South Carolina, and the houses you see across the way are in Georgia. So yeah, right here on the line between Georgia and South Carolina, I'm facing Augusta and I'm standing in North Augusta. So really interesting how the Savannah River divides the two states here in the CSRA, Central Savannah River area. So thanks again for watching. Enjoy these clips.
today is May 1st, first day back to work since the loss of my son. And I giggled, I laughed, smiled, but the pain was still there. It's like I woke up this morning thinking about my son, couldn't sleep last night thinking about my son. But my hope and my trust is in God. And he said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. And that each day gets better. But then I think about if it gets better and it's a lesson, am I no longer thinking about my son? God, I miss him. And it's still like it's yesterday when this happened. But I'm hoping and I'm praying it does get better, but that I remember my son in a good way instead of the pain.
All the enjoyment I'm sad.
days of bereavement leave. 3 days to fall apart, process a life-altering loss, and somehow be work-ready again. That doesn't include traveling for a memorial or a celebration of life. That doesn't include the business of dying at all. That doesn't include the paperwork, any of that. 3 days, it's ridiculous. And then you're expected to come back, sit in a meeting about quarterly reports, and act like your world hasn't just imploded. It's ridiculous. It's unrealistic. And yet so many people are forced to push through because they don't have a choice. Not everyone has paid time off. Not everyone accumulates sick leave. They maybe have to use PTO, or maybe they'd used it for something else. It's a difficult system we're existing in.
My belief is that we need to collectively, as 8 billion people, create a better conversation around grieving. The answer to the question is give yourself time to grieve. It's just okay. I feel no pressure on getting back to work. I really don't. I will grieve because I haven't been through it. It might take me an hour because I could see that knowing my chemicals, and it could take me 4 months. And by the way, there's 2 profound moments in life. The moment someone is born and the moment that someone dies. And I think that they should be understood, and we should go deeper into them. And I think we have to be more supportive of grieving and letting people go through it. I think that people judge themselves too much. My sister's back to work and doing great. Why am I sitting in this dark room sad about my dad? Because that's how you feel, and that's okay. And I think we need to have that combo. My belief.
How long does it take to grieve? According to many companies, only 3 days. But advocates point out it takes more than attending a funeral to process a loss. In honor of National Grief Awareness Day, the nonprofit Option B is rolling out policy recommendations for employers. To talk about bereavement is Holly Wilbanks from Wilbanks Consulting Group and the hosts of Unqualified Therapists, Sarah Simone and Amy Baumgardner. Thank you guys for coming in to talk about this. Because I do think a lot of companies, they offer up this 3-day policy, if you're lucky, and nobody can possibly grieve in that amount of time.
No.
So how long does it take to grieve? I don't know where we should start. So let's start with you ladies.
So I'll go ahead and start. I mean, my husband died and I got 3 days paid. And then, you take some unpaid, and then I really needed to take a bunch of months off. And that doesn't say that I'm over it, because we always talk about how grief isn't linear and it comes up different times, and then I needed to take a whole year off later. And it still comes up from time to time. Right. I think just having an employer who understands and is understanding and works with you and shows that they care makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree. Grief is a never-ending process. Healing is not linear. You're always going to be grieving the loss of someone close to you for the rest of your life. That's just kind of how it works in the mental health space. So I think having an employer that can be sympathetic is definitely helpful. 3 days is certainly not long enough.
Yeah.
My oldest grief, I could say, my brother passed away when I was only 11 years old. I'm 42 now. I still grieve his loss, and my mother passed away 2 years ago.
And you're
still grieving that loss. Exactly.
And Holly, tell me from a company standpoint, what you see with some companies and what they're offering, and truly, what is a correct amount of time?
So there are no federal regulations about bereavement leave. The state of Oregon, as part of their paid family leave options, they allow for some bereavement leave. Every other state and every other employer is kind of on their own. We do know that over 60% of employers, though, do offer some form of bereavement leave. It's typically 3 to 5 days, as you mentioned, but we do see other employers, particularly employers like Adobe or Meta, they're offering 4 and sometimes 5 weeks of bereavement leave. And bereavement leave isn't just the right thing to do by employers, it's the smart thing to do. There's a lot of studies and data showing that offering bereavement leave, having those policies in place that support employee emotional, mental, and physical well-being, that is to the advantage of the employer. There's higher productivity, loyalty, and all of that connects to employee engagement and retention, which directly benefits the employer.
Right, so it can all go hand in hand. All of it goes hand in hand. And Sarah and Amy, you both talked about loss personally. So is there anything that you would have liked seen done differently, or something that could be beneficial, do you think? The deep sighs, yes. Maybe we don't have enough time for these.
The answer is yes. I think it's really important to, as employers, as people in your life, to understand about grief dates, those sort of things that come up, the anniversary.
Like the anniversary dates,
Those are really big and important days that, time doesn't fix it always. It makes you go a little bit further, but not completely healed.
The time doesn't necessarily heal the wound, but you need the support there too. Okay. Thank you for this important conversation. And
Let's start to deal with 5 reasons why it can be hard to adjust going back to work after the death of a loved one. I remember this experience oh so well, because it just felt like I just wasn't connected to anything, and that leads me to number 1 is that I walked around in a fog on autopilot, and that leads me to number 2 is that I just could not focus, and that leads me to number 3 is that I was thankful for the condolences and I'm sorry, but then it started to become distracting, annoying, and it would make me sad, but I appreciated those. Don't get me wrong, and that leads me to number 4 is that you're struggling again trying to be yourself, and that's one of the hardest things that I say for grief is that you're trying to get your identity back and you're trying to get on track, but that's the biggest, it's hard because the people at work, they expect you to be you. And that leads me to number 5 is that you may not be as productive starting off because of the lack of focus, and it's just an adjustment. So if this is you, give yourself grace. When you need to take that break of going out into the break room or walking around the building or getting breath or something outside, make room for that. And if you continue to struggle, please seek a therapist so they can help you adjust to getting back to this identity, this work role. And praying for everybody who's lost anybody.
Did you know that there are no federal bereavement laws in the United States? None. Your ability to grieve depends entirely on your employer, which means in America, grief is a privilege. Think about this for a second. When you have a new child, you're given weeks or even months off to adjust to your new life. But when you lose a child, a parent, or a spouse, you're expected to be back to work in 3 to 5 days. That's barely enough time to plan a funeral, let alone process the fact that your entire world has just been shattered. On average, it takes an estimated 540 hours to handle all the logistics of losing someone. Funeral arrangements, all the legal paperwork, estate management, benefit claims, that's months of work. And that's before we even talk about the actual grieving part. But you get a long weekend. And if you need more time, you have to burn vacation days, take unpaid leave, or risk losing your job. Now let me ask you something. What if it wasn't you being forced back to work? What if it was your surgeon, your pilot, or your child's teacher? Would you want the person performing your surgery to be in a grief fog, unable to focus, unable to think straight? Because grief doesn't just affect emotions, it physically alters the brain. Studies have already proven that grief impacts your memory, your cognition, your reaction time, and decision making, yet we force grieving people back into high stakes jobs where one mistake can cost yet another life. And here's the kicker. Companies can do better. In 2017, Facebook actually changed its bereavement policy only after its COO, Sheryl Sandberg, lost her husband because suddenly grief wasn't just a concept, it was her reality. But why does it have to take powerful people experiencing loss firsthand for change to happen? Why isn't grief considered a fundamental human experience instead of an inconvenience? This system is broken. The way that we treat grief in this country is inhumane, and this has to change. If you agree, let me know in the comments and tell me, how much time did you actually get when you lost someone?
Hello, there is Shailendra here from Promote Balance. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about leveraging the relationship between well-being and productivity in the workplace and in anything that you do in life. It's the new year, and for me today is the first day back at work in this new year. It hasn't been easy. I suffered the loss of my mother about a month ago, who passed on very suddenly in a way that I never thought I would lose anyone. And for the first time in my life, I used the words, "It is what it is." I'm generally somebody who does not believe in accepting things as fixed or done or non-modifiable. I always think that there is a solution to anything, but for the first time I have had to accept that it is what it is with the loss of my mom, as there's absolutely nothing that I can do to bring her back. And that is the painful reality that I'm faced with. A lot of us that have suffered a loss in the previous year have no choice but to move on without the people that we loved so dearly, as opposed to other people that have the choice to choose who to invest in, what relationships to invest in this year, how to spend time with their loved ones, when to start doing what. For us, it's actually a place of no choice, a place of having to go on because life goes on. And probably the biggest thing I want to share is how I have leaned onto my spiritual belief and my faith to go through this period. For a lot of people, losing a loved one shakes your belief system, and it's understandable because you have questions, you have ways you would have expected God to come in for you in that period. But for me, I've chosen to accept that all that is going on now is God's choosing, and He will let me through it successfully. I cannot overemphasize the link between spirituality and well-being, and it's very important in these times that are difficult, where you're grieving a loved one, to focus on your spirituality, focus on the bigger picture, focus on the eternity of the soul, focus on the hope that you get from the religious beliefs or the spiritual beliefs that you have. That has helped me more than I can ever explain. One of the pitfalls that people can fall in is overworking or overly using substances, other addictive behaviors like gambling, which can help in a way to numb the feeling, but it doesn't really help because you're not dealing with the emotions that you're going through, and they may come back quite heavily in the near future. Limit the amount of emotional exploration, emotional expression that you do around your grieving in the workplace, and rather find a safer space that is more empathetic and more understanding of the grief that you're going through. In the last part of this video, I just want to share with people in the workplace that may be encountering someone coming back to the workplace after a big loss. And I don't mean someone who lost people in the last month or two. I mean even people that lost their loved ones a year prior to today, months before, etc. Because some people take longer than others. Some people actually go into what is called complicated grief, where they tend to struggle with the emotions that they're going through to an extent that it starts affecting their day-to-day functioning. And as a leader, manager, colleague, it's very important for you to be aware of the presentation of people that are going through complicated grief, and even aware of people that are still in the normal grieving phase. You need to suggest professional help to them, because this is the only way to help them to keep afloat. It's very important for the organization's sake, as well as for the sake of the individual going through such a difficult period, for them to know that I am understood and I'm supported at work. Thank you for watching, and remember, take it one day at a time.